Sign it, or you'll never work in this city again. My father whispered those words while stepping on my bleeding hand. Moments before, he had punched me in the face in front of 20 investors because I refused to sign a document assuming $850,000 of my brother's debt. I didn't cry. I didn't sign. I just stood up, wiped the blood onto his expensive carpet, and walked out. Before I tell you exactly how I put him in federal prison 72 hours later, tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you have done for family that you now regret? I read every story. I didn't go to the hospital. I drove straight to my apartment, locked the door, and went to the bathroom sink. The face staring back at me was swollen, a purple bruise already blooming across my cheekbone where my father's ring had caught the skin. I cleaned the cut on my hand with rubbing alcohol, watching the blood swirl down the drain. It stung, but the pain was grounding. It reminded me that I was still here. I am Annabelle. I am 29 years old, and by day, I am an operations director for a logistics firm. My job is to look at broken systems, find the leaks, and fix them. I don't cry over spilled milk. I calculate the cost of the spill and fire the person who knocked over the glass. But for years, I couldn't see the broken system right in front of me. My parents, Anthony and Bella, didn't hate me. Hate would have been easier. Hate implies passion. No, they viewed me as a utility. I was the family's human shield and their silent bank account. And my brother, Austin, he was the product we were all forced to buy. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. My hand throbbed, but my mind was ice cold. I needed to understand why tonight had happened. Anthony had always been aggressive, but public violence was new. He was a man who cared about his image more than his soul. Punching his daughter in front of 20 potential angel investors wasn't just cruel. It was suicide for his business. Unless he was already dead. I started digging. I didn't need to hack anything. I just needed to remember. I remembered 3 years ago. When Austin turned 25, he wanted a luxury SUV. Something flashy to network in. Anthony didn't have the cash, so he forged my signature on a cosigner agreement. I found out when the bank called me about a missed payment. When I confronted them, my mother cried and said I was being selfish. That Austin needed to look successful to become successful. I paid the arrears to save my credit score. They called it love. I see now it was just the first installment of a robbery. While Austin was playing CEO with money he didn't earn, I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college because my college fund had mysteriously evaporated during a market downturn. At least, that's what Anthony told me. I looked at the spreadsheet I was building. The math was terrifying. The investors walking out of the party tonight didn't just hurt Anthony's pride. It killed his lifeline. He wasn't trying to bully me into signing that debt document because he was greedy. He was doing it because he was insolvent. He had spent everything, his money, my mother's retirement, and apparently, my future on trying to make Austin happen. He was a cornered animal. He knew that without that signature, without me accepting liability for the $850,000 he had burned, the IRS and the banks would come for him. He hit me because he was terrified, but as I looked at the bruise darkening in the mirror, I realized something. He should have been more terrified of me. He thought he broke me in that ballroom. He didn't realize he just handed the operations director all the motivation she needed to start the final audit. My phone rang, slicing through the silence of my apartment. It was Bella. For a split second, a naive part of me, the little girl who still wanted her mother to protect her, thought she was calling to check on me. Maybe she wanted to know if I needed stitches. Maybe she wanted to apologize for standing there like a statue while her husband assaulted me. I answered. Mom? Annabelle. What have you done? Her voice wasn't filled with concern. It was thick with panic. You ruined the launch. The investors left. Your father is pacing the living room, saying he's going to lose the house. You have to come back. You have to fix this. I sat there, pressing the cold phone against my bruised ear. He hit me. Mom. He stepped on my hand. He was stressed, she shrieked. You provoked him. You know how much pressure he is under. Just come back, sign the papers, and we can put this behind us. Do you want to see us on the street? Is that what you want? I listened to her, sobbing on the other end, and for the first time in 29 years, I saw her clearly. We like to tell ourselves that the quiet parent is the victim too. We tell ourselves they are just as scared, just as trapped. But that is a lie we tell to survive. My mother wasn't a victim. She was the getaway driver. She watched the robbery happen for decades, and because she got to live in the big house and wear the nice clothes paid for by my stolen future, she stayed silent. Her silence wasn't fear. It was a transaction. She was willing to trade my safety for her comfort. She wasn't calling to save me. She was calling to drag me back into the line of fire so she wouldn't have to take the bullet. I'm not coming back, I said. My voice was steady, surprising even me. "And tell Anthony, if he comes near my apartment, I'm calling the police." "You ungrateful little..." I hung up. Then I turned off my phone. I needed to see the damage. I needed to know exactly what they were trying to hide. I opened my laptop and navigated to the online portal for the family trust. My grandmother had left it for me and Austin, to be accessed when we turned 25. I was 29. I had never touched it because Anthony insisted the market was volatile and he was managing it for maximum growth. I typed in my old password, access denied. Of course. They had locked me out. They thought they were clever. But narcissists have a fatal flaw. They are predictable. They believe their own hype so completely that they forget other people exist. I clicked forgot password. The security question popped up on the screen. It wasn't, "What is your mother's maiden name?" Or "What was your first pet?" It was a custom question Anthony must have set years ago, probably while drinking his expensive scotch. The question read, "Who is the future of this family?" I didn't hesitate. I didn't type my own name. I typed, Austin. The screen loaded. Access granted. I almost laughed. It was dark, twisted, and hilarious. Their arrogance was their firewall. And it was paper thin. They were so obsessed with their golden child that they literally made him the key to the vault. But the laughter died the second the dashboard loaded. The balance wasn't just low. It wasn't just dipped into. It was a graveyard. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes like a warning signal. The ledger didn't lie. Numbers don't have favorites. Over the last 5 years, my father hadn't just managed the trust. He had hollowed it out. I scrolled through the transaction history, and it was like reading a diary of my brother's failures. Paid for with my inheritance. March 12th. $45,000. Transfer to Prestige Auto. That was Austin's Range Rover. August 4th. $120,000. Consulting fee to A-Level Solutions LLC. I looked up the LLC registration. The registered agent was Austin Hargrove. The address was his bachelor pad. They hadn't just asked me to take on debt tonight. They were trying to get me to sign a retroactive loan agreement to cover up the fact that they had already stolen $850,000 of my money. They needed that paper trail because, judging by the flurry of recent withdrawals, they were being audited. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It wasn't the hot, tearful anger of a daughter betrayed. It was the clinical, icy fury of an auditor who just found the discrepancy that brings down the company. Then I saw it. The smoking gun. At the very bottom of the dashboard. There was a scheduled transaction. Pending. Date. This Friday. Amount. Remaining balance. Destination. Swift code, routing to the Cayman Islands. They weren't just covering their tracks. They were cashing out. Anthony was planning to drain the last dregs of the account money that legally belonged to me and move it offshore before the investors from the party could sue him for fraud. I checked the time. It was 2 a.m. If I went to the police now, they would tell me it's a civil matter. They would say, "Get a lawyer." And by the time a subpoena was issued, the money would be in the Caribbean and Anthony would be claiming it was a management fee. I needed to stop that transfer. And to do that, I needed to escalate this from a family dispute to a federal crime in less than 48 hours. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years. "Annabelle?" The voice on the other end was rough with sleep. "It's 3 a.m. I know, Marcus. I'm sorry." Marcus was a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a logistics merger years ago. We had bonded over our mutual hatred of sloppy bookkeeping. "I need a favor, and I need a contact at the district attorney's office. The white-collar division." "What did you find?" he asked, the sleep vanishing from his voice. He knew I wouldn't call unless the building was burning. "Wire fraud. Embezzlement. And imminent asset dissipation," I said, my eyes fixed on that pending transfer. "I have the logs. I have the shell company registrations. But the suspect is moving the assets offshore this Friday. I need an immediate freeze. And I need a sting." "Who is the target?" I took a breath. This was the moment. Once I said his name, there was no going back. I wasn't just reporting a criminal. I was burying my father. "Anthony Hargrove," I said. "My father." Marcus was silent for a beat. Then he said, "I'll make the call. Send me everything." I hit send. No guilt, just precision. Anthony thought he was bluffing a clueless daughter. He didn't realize he was playing against the house. Friday morning, Anthony and Austin strode into a downtown high-rise in expensive suits, wearing confidence like cologne. I met them in the lobby, bruise concealed, hands still bandaged. Anthony barely glanced at it, just gave me a tight nod like I'd finally behaved. Upstairs, the boardroom screamed power, city views, a mahogany table, 2 stone-faced investors in gray suits. I introduced my father and brother as the founders. Anthony slid over a folder like a practiced card shark and bragged about nearly $1 million in cash reserves, forged statements, delivered with effortless charm. The lead investor didn't look impressed. He calmly pushed forward a single page. An asset attestation form. A federal requirement. It stated under penalty of perjury that the listed funds were legally theirs, obtained lawfully, and free of liens or theft. This was the edge of the cliff. If Anthony hesitated, the trap could wobble. He didn't. Narcissists don't see traps. He laughed, signed without reading, and handed the pen to Austin. Austin smirked and signed too. Wet ink. Finished crime. Anthony waited for handshakes and $5 million. Instead, the investor opened a leather wallet and dropped it on the table. A gold badge flashed under the lights. Anthony and Austin Hargrove, he said, voice turning sharp. Special Agent Miller. FBI. White-collar crimes. Anthony went rigid. Austin made a strangled sound. Miller read the charges like a receipt. Bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to commit money laundering. The doors opened. 4 uniformed officers entered with calm, practiced speed. Austin jolted for an exit. It was already blocked. Anthony stammered that it was a misunderstanding, that I set him up. Miller cut him off. I'd provided the forensic audit of the trust fund he emptied, the shell company records, and the tip about wiring stolen assets offshore. Then Miller tapped the attestation form. That signature proved they knowingly lied to secure funds, the nail in the coffin. Anthony looked at me, stripped of arrogance, reduced to fear. Annabelle, he whispered. I'm your father. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and met his eyes. You didn't sign a deal, Dad. You signed a confession. That signature is worth 20 years. The cuffs clicked. The man who hit me 3 days earlier sagged as the fight left his body. Austin sobbed, blaming everyone but himself. Down in the lobby, the scene turned into noise, and whispers yet felt silent to me. Anthony was marched out, head bowed, suit rumpled. Austin followed, still crying. Then my mother Bella, waiting for good news. She didn't rush to them. She screamed at the spectacle. Not here. Take them out the back. What will the neighbors think? Even now, she cared more about the audience than the ruin. She spotted me and lunged, venom on her face, shrieking that I'd destroyed them. I didn't stop. I walked past her, heels steady, through the revolving doors into clean city air. The street noise, horns, sirens, chatter sounded like music. I pulled out my phone. Mom. Block. Dad. Delete. Austin. Delete. No victory dance. Just weight lifting off my chest. The house would be seized, the accounts frozen. The parasites locked inside consequences they built themselves. I headed for the subway back to my small apartment. My job. My life. I used to think revenge was making them pay. Now I know it's simpler. Refusing to pay for them. Ever again. I'm free. If you've ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive, drop survivor in the comments. Share this if you believe freedom is worth fighting for.